Welcome to Kids Academy.
Hello Kids Academy, it's Coach Rob, and now that we know about check and checkmate, today we will talk about stalemate. And stalemate is another way a game of chess can end. We all know that you can win, you can lose, but you can also tie or draw in a game of chess. And today we're going to talk about one specific type of draw. It is called stalemate. So let's go over to the chessboard and get right into it. In this game, it's White's turn. And White sees that this pawn is not defended, so White goes ahead and captures it. Thinking, oh, it's a very good move, we capture a pawn for free. Let's go ahead and take a look at this position though. The black king is here on h8, and he's totally surrounded. This rook attacks the entire g file. This knight is aiming next to the king. This queen is aiming next to the king. Even our king is doing a good job controlling these squares. This king is totally surrounded. The problem is, he is safe. No one is attacking this square, h8. And here's where stalemate comes into play. Stalemate happens when a player's king is safe and that player doesn't have any moves to make. So it's that player's turn, the king is safe, and that player doesn't have any moves to make. This king is surrounded, he cannot move. This pawn is stuck, it cannot move. This game ends in a stalemate, a draw, which is very disappointing for White because White is up all these extra pieces. The king is surrounded. It should be an easy win for White, but White got a little bit careless, a little bit greedy, and captured this pawn and left Black with no moves to make and a safe king. So let's go back. What should White have played instead? Well, I see two checkmate moves here for White. Number one, rook g8. Let's take a minute and figure out why this is checkmate. Well, the knight protects the rook attacks the king, and the king is guarding the escape squares, checkmate. White also could have played queen f6, checkmate. The queen attacks the king, the rook is guarding all of these g squares, the king is guarding h7. There's no way out of that, CPR does not work. So instead of queen takes f7, White could have won the game by getting checkmate with either rook g8 or queen f6. But let's take a look at the move rook g7, something we didn't discuss yet. What happens if White plays rook g7? And I want you to think about this question. Is the black king in check, in checkmate, stalemate, or nothing at all? I'll go ahead and pause the video if you like and think about the black king. It's Black's turn. What happens to this game? So the king is not in danger, so it cannot be check or checkmate. And we know the king is not in danger because rooks don't go diagonally. Nothing is aiming at this square h8. The real question is this stalemate? The king is safe. He cannot move. The king has no good squares to go to. This pawn cannot move. Oh, but this pawn can. So as long as the king is safe, and Black has a move to play, even if the king doesn't have a move, but if a pawn does, or a knight, or bishop, or rook, or queen, the game continues. If Black pushes this pawn 2 squares to f5, and it's White's turn, maybe the knight runs here. Well, suddenly, we're back in a stalemate situation. The rook is protected, the rook is guarding all these squares, the king is safe in the corner, but now this pawn is stuck, this pawn is stuck, Black is without a move. It ends in a draw, in a stalemate. So this happens all the time in scholastic chess. My advice to you would be when you are ahead in a chess game, when you are winning a chess game, especially towards the end of the game, don't be super greedy. Don't go around and capture every single opposing piece that you can. Because remember, the goal of the game is to get checkmate. You should be focusing on the king and trying to attack the king and the squares around him so CPR does not work. A lot of times scholastic players run into this issue of stalemate when they get too greedy, they capture too many opposing pieces and not really focus on the king. A second tip would be when you're winning a chess game, don't go too overboard promoting your pawns into queens. If you have too many queens on the board and you're not careful, you will end up getting a stalemate position as well. So one queen, two queens. You can do the ladder checkmate that we learned about in a previous video, force the king to the edge, and make sure you're checking the king, because if the king is in check, it can never be stalemate. Okay, thanks for watching, and I'll see you soon. Bye-bye.